Welcome and thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. A lot of us, when we get to approach midlife, tend to find ourselves with a lot of emotional baggage and that feeling of being stuck. Want to pursue a new relationship, maybe improve the relationship we're in. Perhaps we're taking a look at career choices, but find ourselves stopping short. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today, our special guest is going to be talking with us about a special process simply known as emotional alchemy. Going to be sharing with us how we can remove all of this and hopefully get to be enjoying the life that we truly want to enjoy. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our emotional alchemist, Miss Rowena McKee. Rowena, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
Well, it's a pleasure. Thank
Now,
you.
what is emotional alchemy?
Well, many of us know what the ancient process has been of alchemy. A lot of us have been aware of that if we're more of a metaphysically minded. And I had taken the process metaphorically and used it in an emotional sense. So the lead that would typically be turned is in that metal, which is turned into that gold, that lead is our emotions. That lead is the baggage that we've carried from programming, from childhood trauma, from adult trauma, whatever that might look like, emotions that are not serving our life. And what it does is the process that I have developed moves us and melts the emotions down, and it moves us into a space of clarity, a space of joy, and a space of purpose, so that we really can. A lot of us don't know why we're here, what our purpose is. Well, this helps to clarify that.
Oh, okay. I know it seems like a lot of people have a difficult time understanding what that is, or they search for it and they just can't seem to ever get the answers and, try to figure out, what do I need to do to clear this out of the way so I can figure out what that is?
Right, and it's not easy to clear it out at all. When we have these triggers that cause negative responses that have been there, that are in our system, basically, or they're in our energetic system, we are living our lives being triggered and don't even understand why.
Ah. Now, how did you get involved with something such as emotional alchemy?
It's as usual for things like this. It's a process. I started off initially being very interested in nutrition and got my degree in nutrition. Through that, I realized that the physiological pain, illness, disease, things like that in the body that manifest are actually happening because of emotions, deep emotions that have been in the body for a long time. And when I began to put together what was going on in the body, how it's all tied in, then that led me to understanding that there is a way, and I saw some different processes that I just kind of gradually started working and drawing to me. I believe in what's called the law of attraction. So I do a lot of research, and I just brought to me what I needed. I started off with Reiki as an energy healing, and then I moved into a place of doing more of the nutrition, and then that really wasn't, it just seemed like that wasn't quite enough. And EFT, emotional freedom, kept coming to me, which when something keeps coming to you, you have to begin to look at it if you believe in synchronicity and that kind of thing. So I began studying into that, and it's a form of energy psychology, and I'm very good at psychology and understand the human tracking of emotions, and it was a really good fit. And from there I studied in a lot of Donna Eden's energy medicine. I had done that for many, many years. So I started being in all these modalities and worked with Meridian psychotherapy and just different things to bring this all together to make it into a therapy.
Now, Rowena, it's pretty interesting when you think about emotional alchemy and the way that we're really making such tremendous leaps and bounds, especially in the area of neuroscience, is that we're beginning to see a real connection between disease, for instance, things such as cancer, and our, emotional well-being, and that, when you can make that shift, that in some cases people actually heal from such things. How have you experienced these particular kinds of things with what you do?
It's definitely linked together. Absolutely. I personally know people that I've worked with that have gotten cancer from deep grief, from anger. The grief, I know of a person I worked with that had lung cancer, and she caught it early, but she had such deep grief. So cancer, as an example, and depending upon where it is in the body, can be grief and anger related. If it goes that deep, and if it hits many parts of the body, some parts are stronger than others. So it will kind of hit where we're more weak, our emotions. Some people might have a weaker immune system, so it could hit there. So it just depends upon each person and the type of emotion that it is and where, how it affects it. So different, like if you've got shoulders that are really sore all the time, chances are you've taken on the world. It's a burden. You feel responsible for everybody, just not only yourself. And there's just different parts of the body represent different emotions and our lack of moving forward in those areas.
Interesting. How about some other things that people may have experienced that didn't seem, really sort of extreme, and then as you began to work with them, they said, I really just didn't think about it that way before?
Well, actually, often during the actual process of releasing an emotion from the body, I often will have a client. I had one recently that all of a sudden the arch in the foot the emotion lodged in that spot. As soon as they thought of that particular emotion that was really a core issue, the arch of this client's foot immediately started hurting very, very badly. The body was registering it in that exact spot. And the same client had come to me originally and had a problem with gout. And through releasing some very deep emotions in regard to mom and what had happened in childhood relations with mom, that knee began to heal.
Now, you were talking about things such as emotional triggers, and sometimes we'll find ourselves in situations that sort of pull that emotional trigger, if you will. How far back does this run? I mean, some of these things we may not even be aware of that we're doing until we're actually doing them, and then kind of leave ourselves scratching our heads saying, where did that come from?
It runs clear back to the time of conception.
Okay.
I use a form of spiritual kinesiology to determine how far back we need to go. So it can be clear. I've worked actually past lives. I've worked with past life also, moving it clear because we register memory in our cells and DNA. So we have seven subtle bodies, and that etheric part, that last spiritual body that goes the furthest out energetically, is the etheric that moves with us from lifetime to lifetime. So that has all the memory and the cells of DNA, so sometimes it can go clear back to past lives, which I clear that also.
Now, what has that been like in that experience when you talk about past lives? So it's true or possible that we're somehow carrying information and experiences from a past life that we're not real familiar with?
Correct. So the soul basically has all experiences recorded, and we bring that in. Now, not all experiences are going to come in as a problem, of course, but some of those are here for us to clear and learn in this lifetime. And what happens with the negative emotions, whether they're presently have happened in the present life or in a past life, is they literally leach or suck the life force energy from our bodies, causing us physical and mental fatigue. So a lot of people wonder why they're not feeling good. It's because they're busy trying to manage their emotions, and it takes a lot of energy.
That's so fascinating to think to the fact that we're actually acting out, I guess, a karma for, I guess the right word, things that we may have done in a past life. How do you, explain something like that? I know you kind of touched on it there, but, how this is possible.
A lot of it's intuition. I work very intuitively, and a lot of people who come to me just they'll say a certain something that just strikes a certain chord, and I then will ask them some questions, and I'll ask them, do you feel? And they're connected up. At this point, we've connected through various means to our soul in the work that we're doing, and they have a knowing that comes through that they feel. They may say, I've had this fear of water, and I don't know why, because I don't have anything in this lifetime that would have made me fearful of water, or whatever it might be, and they can't place it, that they don't understand where that fear came from. It's not logical to them as to how that could have happened. And so we start talking about it, we start exploring it, and there's a resonance in the body that kind of happens. It's like, oh, that resonates.
That's interesting. Now, as you have been doing this work, what has been to you seemingly one of the more unusual stories of a past life that carried over into this life that a person was experiencing?
Boy, I have to try and remember.
I figured something would jump right out at you, but apparently it's not that easy.
That one's a harder one because a lot of times when information is channeled in, because I channel information in, I don't always clearly remember that information. It's when you channel something, it's not always something that it's not coming in through your conscious mind, it's coming in from the subconscious. And so I don't work with it every day, but I'm really coming up the blank on that one because they're not super profound. They're just little things, actually. They're not always really large and big, like you would have something of a person who's been, let's say, a woman who might have been raped or molested as a child, and that's so huge, and those are issues that I clear, so they're very, very subtle, the past life things that come through. They're just subtle fears of various nature that kind of piggyback on.
Interesting stuff. Now, you were talking earlier about what was known as emotional freedom technique, and this is one of a few different modalities that you use to help people clear this baggage or these emotional blocks that we have. Describe what emotional freedom technique is.
Well, EFT, emotional freedom technique stands for, it's also known as EFT commonly. It is a meridian-based healing system. So most of us know about acupuncture. It uses the same points as acupuncture, except for acupuncture has approximately 365 points, and we use around 12 to 13 in EFT. So each meridian basically is associated with an organ system in the body, and the organ systems have a name like the stomach meridian, the lung meridian, and each one is also associated with specific emotional patterns. So we are actually catching, we don't know where the emotion is stored in the body. So we are catching each meridian, with the exception of the liver meridian, we're catching each meridian and tapping. We set it up in the system so that basically that the corresponding disruption to the emotion, there's a disruption that is set up. The emotion causes a disruption within the meridian system, within the energetic system. And so when we recall that emotion, we get a trigger, we get an intensity, we get a feeling that, oh, I'm feeling this emotion. And that's basically the emotion being set up. And we say some affirmations which directs a specific emotion to be released from the body. And when the affirmation is said out loud, the mind registers the directive, and between that and the already set intention of releasing the emotion is easily able to be cleared. By tapping, instead of the needles, we're using the tapping with the fingers on these various points. And it then, sometimes what I will see the client do as we're tapping and saying this affirmation that we're ready to release a specific emotion, there's an actual, at a specific point, which is where the emotion's lodged on that meridian, an intensity. And some of my clients will cry as that release happens. Sometimes they'll yawn. Sometimes they cough. Sometimes there's nothing. It's just a release, but the intensity gets more. There's a more intense there because that's where it's lodged. And then it kind of goes high, and then it just drops out. It bottoms out.
So now, you're saying that there are certain parts in the body that emotions are stored into. It's not just all in our head.
No, it's not. And this is one of those, what I say, misunderstood areas. We think that our emotions are in our head and our mind, and actually our mind is responding to the emotions that are lodged within our energetic system. And what clearly happens, which I have clients that are very stunned because they can't believe it's gone and it's that easy when you're carrying emotions your whole life, that it could be that easy to release. But it's that easy. And the mind then, it's like amnesia. The mind, because it can't find it, it knows it was there, but it can't find the trigger. It just basically lets it go, and there's nothing to, shall we say, the thought process isn't able to continue because the emotion's no longer there. So the pattern, that thought pattern actually dissolves, and a new pathway within the brain can then easily, and it's a healthy pathway, can easily begin to, should we say, develop, and it develops very quickly.
Oh, okay. So when you talk about, as you're helping people remove these emotional traumas, if you will, what you do is actually working on the brain as well?
Yes.
Okay.
There are certain eye movements and certain things that are done to actually reset, neurologically reset the brain, the left and the right hemisphere of the brain, so that they're actually, within this particular issue or emotion, they're actually able, the brain's actually able to reset and to grasp it and to rebalance. Really, this whole process is a release and rebalancing, so there's not blockages. We're just rebalancing the body to align it, body, mind, and soul.
Wow, fascinating stuff. Give us, if you can, another story, if you will, of someone who's come to try to remove whatever was inside of them. Maybe they weren't even really aware. They just came to you and said, I can't figure out what's going on. I just know they're not working for me, and I want to move forward. I don't know how to do that. And what happened there?
Okay. Well, I've got, of course, there's plenty of stories, but I'm going to kind of make it common ones because they tend to be common often.
Oh, okay. So you've seen a lot of people, and you start to see pretty consistent patterns pretty much with everybody then. Wow, that's interesting.
Exactly.
Okay.
And
I always thought that, but everybody, they feel their patterns, their problems, whatever the case is, are unique. Well, they're unique to you, but really, as humans, we've only got really a certain array of emotions and experiences. They're unique to us.
Well, we have separated ourselves.
Okay.
We have disconnected. And we're not connected to our source. We're not to the God source. We're not connected often to our heart. We're disconnected to our soul. And when we disconnect, we think we're the only ones, when in fact, these are common. I can tell you almost everybody who comes to me, they have all these, they're common. It's very rare that it's something that's unusual or different. It seems to be very common. So some of our more common ones are, mommy and daddy issues. This is where it starts. And most of the time, I have to say it's with mom. The majority of it is with mom, believe it or not. Not to say it's not with dad sometimes, because of course it is. But there's always there is some around dad, but the larger amount is around mom. But what we often have is we have emotional abandonment, we have physical abandonment, we have a lack of love, feel a lack of nurturing. There's commonly physical abuse. emotional abuse, and there's feeling of not being good enough, feeling of really not being valued as a person. And these are very deep cores that continue like magnets to draw the same to them as they go through their life. So they'll draw those things in their relationships. And those very same, they'll have trouble, and that's what will manifest in the relationship, because that's what you believe you are or what you lack is what you draw to yourself.
Okay.
And so, I've had one very profound session that I went through with a woman. She was, and I do have permission to share this one, and this is a very profound one. She was raped when she was young, and what happened was she was 9 years old, and she was playing with her friend in the backyard of her home. And a strange man came into the yard, and he killed her friend in front of her.
Wow.
But before he did that, he actually strangled her friend, and she watched the whole thing. But before he did this, he sexually raped both of the gals. He raped them and tried to strangle the gal I was working with. She saw everything and received everything except for she didn't die.
Mm-hmm.
And so this set up a whole host of, there was nothing to be around her neck. She would feel like she was strangling. She had PTSD about people being around her because they might harm her. She had, of course, there was the rape aspect and seeing the friend die. She should have died, not her friend. She couldn't save her friend. Why did she live and her friend didn't live? So punishment, and there was just a lot of emotions around this. And so we took this, and I probably cleared this whole issue within maybe 3 sessions, believe it or not, which is really quick if you think of how much emotion is around it. But when a person's ready to release and they don't want to have this anymore, they go really quickly. It goes fast.
Wow.
And believe it or not, there's a lot of sexual abuse, amazing amount of sexual abuse. It's just so very, very sad. And so I work with clearing those. And these are those deeper core issues that really keep a woman from being able, a woman and men too, but women more in particular, from having a quality of life within their sexual life.
Sure.
So there's a lot of these things that get set up that will take it sometimes, depending upon the person. Some people are more visual, and so they will see an issue and will clear the issue. Others, they can't visually see as well, like a movie in the head, so we clear it by emotion. So each session is individualized, very much so.
Now, I was going to ask you if you can tell me this, Rowena, is now when you work with these people, obviously we have memories, and it seems like these things just never go away. Is this permanent? I mean,
yes.
There it is. Is it permanent?
There's two.
And what is that like?
Yes and no. It depends.
Okay.
It's permanent if it's a past thing that's happened. If it's completely reset, if it can be reset exactly the same way, then this can reset. For an example, if you're no longer a child, you cannot reset those exact same things that happened with mom and dad.
Sure.
You can't reset it. If a client comes to me, a patient comes to me and says, I'm in the middle of a divorce. I have this anger towards my soon-to-be ex. I have this, and this going on. I will be very clear and say to that person, I can help you to help yourself to keep this minimized. That it's going to most likely continue to reset because you're in the pattern, the exact pattern that's causing it to reset. So in that case, I will give them ways to keep it manageable. I give them skills to work with it themselves. And because it can reset. But things from the past, unless it's reset the exact same way with the exact same person or with another person, which is the same exact way, it doesn't reset.
Mm-hmm.
And people won't believe me. They'll be sitting there going, I can't feel it. It's gone. And I'll say, go home. Don't just trust what happened. Go home. When you come back next week, let's talk about it. We'll see how it is. And they come back, and they feel, invariably, they'll say, well, even right there during the end of the session, I feel lighter. And that's that emotional alchemy piece, that when we take the lead out of our body, it actually, that's the motion, it literally makes us lighter of body, and it keeps us from being weighted down. So we're waiting, W-A-I-T, for our life to get better, but it can't because we have the weight of the emotions weighing us down.
You know, I was just thinking, Rowena, years ago, there was a time where I felt like, or I must have had a fear of authority, if you will. So in the world of work, when I would be at work and a manager would come around the corner, I'd always have this little jolt in my stomach. And what was interesting is that I was suggested, why don't you go to a hypnotist and just try hypnotherapy, you know? And so I told him, I said, apparently I have this fear of authority. And I said, this is why. You know, whenever there's somebody of authority that comes around, I feel this little, sort of like stage butterflies, this little feeling, you know, like I'm on guard. He says, okay, well, we can go ahead and clear that out. So here I am. He goes about doing what hypnotherapists do. And then I go to work the next day, and sure enough, somebody rounds the corner of authority, and the jolt wasn't there. And I thought, hey, this is interesting. And over time, I was so comfortable that what was fascinating, and I'm just shooting this out to the listeners for the kind of work that you do, is that the experience was so unique because not only was that removed, that jolt, that being on guard, but I started engaging these people as people. And there was a time when I was like that, but somewhere along the line I got bumped off the road and I started being nervous around supervisors for whatever reason. And then my relationship with these people took on a different dynamic. I wasn't on guard. It wasn't like I was feeling like I was authentically being me, as though I didn't care if you fired me or not. I'm going to be genuine with you. And I found their relationships back with me were just as kind, considerate, and humorous and so forth. And I found what a neat benefit when you think about the kind of work that you do, when you're removing these emotional traumas, blocks, triggers, whatever they may be, that you'll find your relationships with people, regardless, you know, like you were mentioning earlier about rape, for instance, that a woman may feel that she had been, say, molested at a particular time in her life, or a man had been, you know, in a relationship, she perhaps had an affair, so now he's got a distrust of women in relationships, that when that clears, that you can actually authentically approach a space where you can take truly things as they really are in the moment.
Exactly.
And that seems to be a really wonderful effect.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. What this therapy does, and I bring in a number of things. Of course, the EFT is a big part of it, but I bring in a whole array of things. I'm actually doing the energy work on my clients as they are working with me, as an example, balancing the energies. But the benefits of all this, things that happen, you're right, we only have the moment. We only have the now. And if we're being hijacked by our emotions, and this could be stress, anxiety, anger, frustration, depression, all kinds of fears and phobias, these all hijack us. You know, those negative memories, the inner child issues, which we were talking about earlier, self-doubt, lack of self-confidence and self-esteem, guilt, grief, confusion, trauma, addiction, it works for well, relationship issues, control issues, even the triggers underneath bipolar.
Why would anybody want to get out of bed?
Why? But these are all things that we're dealing with, and we don't know how to get rid of it. And these are what keeps us from living in the moment. Because when you have...
And giving us choices in that moment as well.
Right. And when you've got these... When you're internalizing and rerunning thoughts over and over in your mind, there's that mind chatter and that... which we've all had, that chatter. This therapy literally removes that chatter, so you are in a place of really peace and joy, and you can bring in and live in the moment and live mindfully, and you can do those things creatively that you want to and the things that your soul really wants. And so what this does is literally shifts you on a soul level. When we shift ourselves, it allows others around us to shift, and that's what happened to you. When you no longer had that fear or that trigger around authority and you shifted, you then allowed them to meet you where you were truly at, and you could see that, no, they weren't trying to do this to you, it was you, and you could then have a relationship with them.
Yeah. You know, it's really fascinating stuff. I know just recently we were doing a segment about attracting miracles, and one of the things, and this is a woman who's been doing this for more than 30 years, and just recently I was also reading in a particular book, and I don't remember what it was, but I said, this is amazing. Here's somebody who's saying the same thing that she just did, that, you know, as we tend to set goals or pursue our dreams, one of the biggest hindrances or obstacles that we have is that we just tend to get in our own way.
We do. And we can't even help it. And we beat ourselves up. And the fact is that living here on Earth is not easy.
No, it isn't, but it isn't hard either.
But it doesn't have to be that hard. But conventional ways of doing things have told us we have bought into the belief system that things have to be hard.
Mm-hmm.
And now things are coming about that are showing us, no, it is actually easy. If we change the belief systems, if we change the judgments about ourselves, if we change the programming and decide there is a better and easier way. But we don't always want to believe that. It couldn't be, but it is.
Mm-hmm. I keep thinking of the movie The Ten Commandments. Mm-hmm. And what I've been finding, especially over the last few years with the program, with all the wonderful people such as yourself who come on and show us how we can become better people, not for everyone else, but for ourselves. Everyone else really automatically becomes better when you become better, you know, which is really fascinating. But I think the number one sin that people really, really suffer from is judgment.
Yes.
You know, and I can't help but see such a consistency and how true that really is, and how limiting that if we realized we were doing this in so many situations and we cleared that, the choices would just become phenomenal for ourselves.
Absolutely. And this, you know, the one thing that for me, anything that I work with, that I teach, that I, you know, whatever that looks like is something that I've already done. I've worked this whole therapy on myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so judgment for me, as for all of us, was a big piece. And what I realized was that it first began with me, like you said. We first judge ourselves because we felt separated. We came into have agreed to be in this life in a separation in our feeling, and we want to move back to that feeling of connectedness, to source, connected to each other, connected to ourselves, opening our hearts, and we haven't felt safe to do that because we feel separated from various things. What this therapy does is brings us into oneness and alignment with ourselves, with each other, and with that God source.
Oh.
And that keeps us, when we begin to go, okay, if you do believe in reincarnation, and you think of the thought, I have probably, and I do believe, done everything that anybody, not in this lifetime, but through the lifetimes of whatever anybody, you know, murder, rape, all these really gross and horrible things that we see, that we just judge. And if we begin to go, I've done every one of those at some time, we begin to have more compassion and go, oh, okay, I don't have to feel like I have to judge that person. I can have compassion. I can have compassion. There doesn't have to be judgment. I can have compassion for myself, and we begin to break down those barriers that we've had up against each other. And we begin to have a life that really, we allow people to have their journey. We allow them to have their soul journey and to have their karma and to work through it without judging that person for it.
Oh. Now, you have a wonderful website people can go to find out how they can get involved with this emotional alchemy, and tell us about that.
Well, it's the Art of Emotional Alchemy.com, so the Art of Emotional Alchemy.com. And you can read more information. I'm continuing to update that on a regular basis. I will be having, more information going on there. So please check back regularly on that. And you can find out how to contact me through that website. And more information on just the process and what I do and how it might look for you, how it might benefit, And I also work, once we work through a lot of the emotions, I find clients then wanting to have the desire to lose weight, to nutrition, bring more nutrition into their life because the emotions aren't hijacking them in that area. It's a natural process that begins to flow in that area too, which is kind of nice. And so we will get rid of the need to emotionally eat, which puts you into alignment in that arena also.
Fascinating stuff. Rowena McKee, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program. Give out your website again.
The Art of Emotional Alchemy.com.
Rowena, thank you again for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
You bet. Want to thank you, the listeners out there. If you're feeling like you need some emotional alchemy to get you past all these things that seem to tie you down so you can enjoy the multitude of choices for the dreams and desires you're trying to pursue, there you go. Emotional alchemy is for you. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to join us at our website at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50, and sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter. We also have a wonderful blog you can visit where we archive our shows. You can listen to at your convenience and share with others. We thank you again. This is the Beyond 50 radio program. Remember, live your day past halfway.